Hello, and welcome to Positive Fandom. I'm your host, Artem, and today we have Dieter Bastian with us. We're going to review the second episode of the Arcane. The episode is called Some Mysteries Are Better Left Unsolved. Dieter, how are you today?
I'm fine, Artem. Thanks for having me for the second episode. I much enjoy going through the season or the show again, which I normally wouldn't have time to do considering all the new content. But with Arcane, I'm really going through the season again with you.
It is wonderful, isn't it?
Yeah. So let's just not wait. Let's jump right into it with my first take on it. And you mentioned it already in the last review, considering the first episode, that Chase, we will now get to know some other characters, more now from the Piltover side. And you already mentioned that Chase was the one who bought stuff from Benzo. And I didn't really was aware of that, but I watched the second episode again, and immediately at the beginning, there was a dialogue that he bought the stuff from the Undercity, but the dialogue was a little bit low because they were just behind the corner still. And you were just getting into the episode. So I probably, missed that a little bit, but now on the second view, there they talk about, Caitlin asks if it wasn't too fearful to go to the Undercity to purchase those things. And we were immediately, it was immediately clear that this is a little bit, not directly a flashback, but that where we are probably outside of the apartment before the explosion happened, so that we could see who was on the door on the other side of it.
Yeah, what a great setup that they made for us for this second episode, where we pick up right at the point where the children are inside of Jace's or his benefactor's apartment, and they're trying to get in. And we remember this scene from the first episode, but we were on the other side in the first episode. Yeah. So now, instead of seeing the story from the children's point of view, we're seeing the story from Jace's point of view, or Piltover's point of view. And it's fantastic. The children are inside, they're stealing everything. Yeah. A lot of stuff, I'm sure, that maybe Jace even purchased from from the underworld.
And it's the first time we get to learn about Caitlin, the character Caitlin. And as far as I know about League of Legends, the game, she is a favorite to play. But I could be wrong. Let us know in the comments. But she's not a Caitlin in the game, it's a little bit way earlier at this point in time.
Yes,
and she is
exactly.
the child of a very wealthy family who seems to we find out a little bit later in the episode, who is probably a little bit of a sponsor of Chase, a little bit of a sponsor to him, considering his inventions. And that was I was picking up where the two know each other.
They certainly do. I mean, they're walking towards this laboratory of a sorts, and they're having this rapport, and you get a lot of information just from those first few lines of them walking there. But before it gets very far in the episode, of course, there's that explosion that occurs from these crystals that Powder has kind of taken out of that box. And you can see Jace kind of, he tried to get into the lab, but he couldn't. And that explosion just kind of like knocks him out. Yeah. And quite possibly even the lady he's with, his benefactor's daughter. So, he doesn't really get a chance, or he has a glimpse. They show you a glimpse of Vi, like he kind of sees but it's in smoke, and it's kind of,
she's just leaving the apartment.
Right. And, and he's completely knocked out. Yeah. And I just love how they get into this flashback scene, Dieter. Don't you?
I totally forgot about the flashback scene with his mother. They're in a snowstorm, and they're probably already on the way out. I don't know where they are, just in a big snowstorm. And the great thing, what we talked a little about earlier, the details of the show. You can see her mother has already frostbite on two fingers. And later, a little bit later in the episode, when she is in the council, you can see she has some protective sleeves over her fingers. This was just a detail. I don't know if I caught it on the first viewing, but now at the second viewing, it was apparent to me. You could concentrate a little bit more on those just small details. And then they encounter someone in the middle of those snowstorm, and I don't know anything about that character. I don't know if he is ever mentioned in the show. I probably don't know. There are some people who probably know League of Legends. Let's just say he's a wizard at the moment, and he gets them out of the dangerous situation with some magic and a little bit of a crystal.
Yeah, and it's a spectacular scene. This huge snowstorm. Jace's mother is on the floor, and he's so scared. He's just a boy in the scene, and that wizard has like this, like a crystal in his hand. He's holding it up like this, and the crystal is kind of floating above his hand. And he takes a staff and kind of whips it around them, like he was stirring something in the air. And you can see runes kind of floating around, and it's definitely magic. This is magic that we're witnessing. And doing this, it seems like they travel, and they're not just traveling, on land. It looks like they're traveling through space and time. And when the spell that this traveler or this wizard finishes, Jace and his mother are in this, rather than being in this cold blizzard place, they're in this beautiful Eden-like garden. It's incredible.
Perhaps a little bit warmer
yes.
than it was before. Yes. And considering, like you said, the travel mechanics that we see are probably the travel mechanics that later chasers use for the ships, later.
Absolutely. And to top it off, Dieter, I mean, not only has this incredible thing happened to Jace and his mother, but the traveler gives him this crystal. It's unbelievable. It's like such an incredible thing to not just be transported, but also, here, I'm giving you this crystal with the expectation, or perhaps the ability to do what I've just done. And it's amazing. It's just amazing.
And you can see in the present time for the second episode that he still wears this crystal on his wrist, He still has it with him. And that has probably pushed him in the way to the science, or find out more about magic.
It really has, and we can see the influence this has had over his life. This miraculous event. I mean, if that happened to you or I, we would never forget that, and that would it would change your life. And you can see it's changed Jace's life so much so that he's pursuing. There's a similarity between the crystal that's in his bracelet that he wears, and you can see him, like, during the episode, sometimes kind of touching the crystal. Like he touches it with his hand a lot. And you can see the similarity between the shape and color of that crystal and the crystals that powder dropped that caused the explosion. So there's some connection there. And, you and I have no choice, like as the observer, to assume that at some point he's figured out how to grow, let's say, or create more of these crystals.
Totally. But considering the explosions, that was not a lucky accident for him, because there is an investigation.
He got a lot of unwelcome attention.
Yeah, correct. Because Grayson, the sheriff, was in his apartment, and this is the first time we get to learn Victor. Victor will become his partner in later episodes. But when I first saw Victor, I was thinking, this is going to be some Weasley character, some shady character that you could probably hate with his political mechanics. But I was wrong. I was wrong about Victor, how the relationship would evolve. Just from the first glimpses I saw him, and he was really inquisitive of him. What are you doing here? And so I thought, this is probably not a nice guy to deal with. But I was wrong about him.
Yes, he does turn out to be quite different from his initial appearance, and it's quite clear that the fact that Jace had to sort of go to some place where he normally wouldn't go to get equipment and supplies implies that he might have been doing things a little bit outside of the box, a little bit different from how everybody in Piltover operates, and perhaps meddling with things that people there just don't meddle with.
Yeah, and Grayson says later when she's get questions by the council, she doesn't know what was taken and what was what actually he was doing in his apartment.
And we don't quite figure out, or we're not told everything, but it's revealed in this episode, or I think it's revealed in this episode, what he wants to do. But he's been arrested. He's in jail.
Yeah.
And of course, this is a Piltover jail, so it doesn't look so bad.
not really. It's just probably for a little time, because at this prison cell we learn. We get to know the character of Heimerdinger. Really cool, strange, a little bit strange character, Heimerdinger. And it's he's probably a favorite to play in the games too. As
he is quirky. He's kind of like energetic. He's not human. He's some other type of creature, which is amazing that we even see things like this in this series, because he can speak, and clearly he's special. He's an older character, a character that lives for a long time, and he's in charge.
He says about 100 years happy that Chase said he wanted to find out a little bit more about magic, if he can combine magic and science. And Heimerdinger has some history with that. And then we see not a flashback, more just of like an oil painting, I would say, that showed something, but not really a flashback. What happened? What Heimerdinger knows about mixing magic with science.
Yeah, it's a classical painting that you and I both recognize. It's on some painting somewhere, either in the Louvre or some museum somewhere. And it's a painting of antiquity where we can see, the ancients meddling with magic. That's probably the name of the painting. The ancients dabbling in magic by by some famous master, right? And you can see that there's a trouble, and Heimerdinger is telling Jace, this is a warning. He's like, the arcane is dangerous, a force of nature. Science cannot control it. And that's where we get some mysteries are better or less left unsolved. But honestly, it's gone too far to go back, hasn't it?
Yeah. And then he has to appeal to the council, where we learn the council members. And they have really great different designs considering the council members. But before that, there was this little scene, considering we meet for the first time. Her name is Mel, Mel, and she's picking out puzzle boxes, puzzle boxes. And the seller says to her, "Oh, this is a puzzle box for a toy. It's fine." And a little bit later, you can see her giving that toy puzzle to Hoskell, a counselor, and he says, "This is very tough to solve, And you immediately know how much she thinks of him, considering his brain activity."
Yes. And, apparently, I guess they're implying that some of the members on this council, who are kind of like the governing body of Piltover, right, may or may not be as clever as others. And some members on the council have more ambition than others. Obviously, Heimerdinger is the leader, so there's no place for him to progress to. But some of the other members, perhaps their positions are not as powerful as they hoped. And,
Caitlin's mother is there,
Yes. And so the council, he has to sort of be on trial in front of this council of members of Piltover, and it's a variety of individuals, including Heimdallr, who's in charge.
Great science, and then he uses that bad word, that little bad word, magic. Magic.
Well, it certainly strikes a chord with a lot of the council members who feel that this is and just not really a good idea, and they call it the Arcane, right, Dieter?
Yeah.
So that's where the name,
as I understand it, correct.
Yeah, and I had no idea that that's what of course this is the name of the series, but I didn't know that that's what they're calling it. The Arcane is what they call magic for them, and like maybe the arcane arts or something like that. And ironically, we find more or less that Medarda is the ambitious counselor, and she wants something that will put Piltover on the map.
Yeah, on the next step, on the next level, to other cities.
Yes, and so I think that that's very interesting, because there's already somebody interested in something that will be revolutionary, something that will change their world somehow, and she knows she needs this in order to become more powerful. And become a let's say a more important person in Piltover and in the council. And so while this is happening at the same time, the Caramans are the people who supported Jace in this endeavor. So although Jace was transported to a better place with his mother, he didn't have, I guess, perhaps as a lot of money to do these experiments. And you can imagine these scientific experiments must be expensive, right?
Yeah. And so I believe that Caitlyn's parents were a little bit of helping him out in that way. They were very, very fond of him.
Absolutely. And Jace is clearly an intelligent young man, so I can see how someone would take an interest in his scientific endeavors. But at the same time, in order for him to pursue this, considering the reaction that they have towards the Arcane, Jace must have kept some of what he was doing secret. And, this is very important in the story, because even Jace knew that people were not going to be open to studying the Arcane in Piltover. Like this was something that many of the people just in Piltover either thought was inappropriate to study, or could not necessarily help them out in any way.
Yeah, and
but Jace knew it could help them because of his experience.
Yeah, and a little bit later in the episode, you can immediately recognize that the parents of Caitlyn immediately make a line in the sand, and they don't want to have to do anything with him anymore, that could reflect on their status, perhaps a little bit into a bad light. So they cut the ties with him, and even Caitlyn has to get inside and don't have to probably to see him anymore.
He certainly is. I mean, he's accused of this illegal experimentation and endangering the citizens of Piltover, and he knows that he is guilty of this. Jace is not saying, I didn't do these things. He says he's sorry, and, under Heimdallr's advice, he wants to actually continue his studies. And even though Karaman comes forward and speaks on his behalf, and Heimdallr also tries to defend him. At some point, Medara, I think that's her name, asks Jace if his work is worth it. And that's when he kind of tells them he's trying to create magic. And everybody's saying, no, you can't just create magic. You have to be born with that. It's not acquired. And Jace says, surely we, as the pioneers of science, can do this. And, surely we can control the Arcane. And I kind of think it's interesting that, this Jace feels it's possible, but he has not shared any of the facts that he knows about what's happened. And I wonder if do you think anyone knows how Jace and his mother got to Piltover? Do you think anyone knows?
I don't actually know how they got into the city, and it's never delved deeper into in the series. At least the council let him stay with his mother again. He doesn't have to go to jail or something like that, but he is banned from the university. And for him, actually, at that moment, almost his life is over. He's going to his apartment, which is blown to bits at that moment, and he actually wants to kill himself. He's contemplating jumping out the window, but there's one who stops him, surprisingly.
It's Victor, right?
Yeah, correct.
There's something about that window, Dieter, because later on in the series,
okay,
I think Victor ends up right at that point too.
Okay.
And we can talk about that too, but there's something about that particular window that they chose to use as a possible jumping off point to your death. I don't know why Jace feels that he might have tried
at the end of a line.
Yeah, I don't know why he felt that. I think that he, really was, it's really sad that he got to that point, and it saddens me that he wanted to do that. And I don't encourage anyone to do that. Just go ahead and speak to somebody first before you do that, please. I was just I felt so sad for him. And I guess he felt he was alone and that, there was no way things would work out for him anymore.
But Victor is actually, he delved a little bit into his experiments and his studies and his books, and he is on the same page.
Yes, who would have thought that Jace would have found an ally in Victor?
Yeah.
And, even though, Jace's sponsor has rejected him, Jace still decides to run the experiments, in collaboration with Victor. And at the same time, we see a lot of experimentation going on in the underground with Silco, don't we?
Yeah, we have covered the story points from Piltover, but like you said, in the Undercity, there's still new rumblings going on, considering picking up from the first episode, we got that little shimmer, and Silco is ready to push the experiment to the next stage, to the human stage.
It certainly, he certainly is, and he pressures Deckard, who is the young man who was following
the street fuck from the first.
Exactly.
From the street gang from the first episode, to take a little bit of sip of that stuff.
And it's terrifying, Dieter. This stuff looks terrible. We saw what it did to that poor rat in the cage there and how it attacked that cat. I mean, it was terrifying. I don't think anyone would want to take this product and live after that. It seems like it's a life-altering drug, doesn't it?
Yeah. But I think Deckard has not a lot of possibilities to say no, And a little bit before that, we get to see a meeting between Silco and Marcus, who's probably the second in command of Grayson, who has some dealings with Silco on the side,
Yeah, so it seems like not only does Vander have an agreement with enforcers, but Silco seems to have an agreement with Marcus. And so both of the gentlemen have some kind of agreement with the Piltover, law enforcement. And they almost have to do this because, just to even survive and kind of keep things in order. But they don't want to let anyone know about it because I think that the people from the underground would just not be happy that, anybody is even talking to the people from Piltover. In fact, their reaction, the underground's reaction, or at least the general feeling of everybody in the underground, is that they don't like being pushed around by the enforcers from Piltover.
Yeah. And we see the bar, the last stop again, where a lot of people are not happy with Swenda's decisions making or how he handles the situation, And there is where we meet Sevika and some other people who leave him and probably get pushed to the side of Silco at that point.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that this is happening to Vander at this very moment, at a critical moment, when they're looking for someone to sort of put blame on for what happened in Piltover.
Because the enforcers are still looking for the four culprits of the heist.
Yes, and this is when we hear Vi tell Vander that if he doesn't fight back, she
Yeah,
will. And Vander says, it would be ashamed if I had to put back on those cast irons.
yeah.
And I think that
And
that
and you
gives.
see them, hanging up above of his
Yes,
bar.
and
Yeah,
I think that when he says that, I think that gives Vi an idea, like in her mind, oh yeah, here's something that can be used to fight. And there's a bit of irony there because it's ironic and it's cast iron. It's getting even more ironic because this is one of the first scenes we saw in episode 1 when Vi and her sister were
yeah,
very young. They saw Vander with those irons on. And so, we keep getting images that are, or implications that we might have to go back um, to that, again, that scene on the bridge where that, tragic thing that happened to Vi and her sister, where they lost their parents. But, Vi, she's still very upset about this.
yeah,
And, she wants more for her sister. This is a legitimate, reason to fight. But Vander warns her, nobody wins in a war and
yeah,
everything like that. But Vander promises Vi that he's going to protect everybody and to not worry. And that's kind of a very hard situation for him right now, considering what has happened with this explosion. And
yeah.
I
And you
think too.
can see him play with the magic, with the message pipe, So at some time in the bar where he's probably still trying to figure out to use it or not, because enforcers are still roaming the streets of the Undercity looking for the four culprits. And there was one scene that I want to mention. I didn't know if you were taken aback like I am, when they questioned one of the residents, and then you see Powder and Jinx and Milo and Clegger are all hiding, and this this little poor fella comes crashing through the window. I jumped out of my chair at that scene because it was totally unexpected when he comes crashing through the window with one of, always in Arcane, with a great action moment in slow motion. Looked fantastic and totally came out of nowhere that they would throw this guy into the window.
It certainly was invasive. They thought they were hiding out. They thought they
Yeah,
were safe. And then out of nowhere comes someone not only crashing into where they're hiding, but then the enforcers are kind of looking right at them.
yeah.
And, there's almost no place they can hide. And, I think that is an indication for them to realize that they're always going to be pursued, or they're going to continue to pursue someone to find out who did this. And, of course, it's not. I feel terrible for these kids because they didn't know this was going to happen. No one knew this was going to happen. I think maybe Jace knew how dangerous these crystals were, but certainly Powder and Vi and the gang had no idea that this explosion would destroy an entire building and possibly kill people. This was something that they could have never anticipated. No one could have anticipated that. And so, the fact that they're kind of embroiled in this, it's really unfair. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I think it's really unfair. But the Piltover, people are concerned, and they feel that there's something more to it. And I think that maybe the reason why they're so terrified is because of the history of magic in Piltover that we don't know. We don't really have privy to it. Although we, like I said, we saw that painting earlier from Heimdallr, but there might be more to what had happened. One of the people on the council said that it almost destroyed their world.
Yeah.
But there is a lot more to this idea, and Jace is not doing this Jace does not want to rule, Piltover.
No. He's not really interested in the politics game, to play the politics game.
He really isn't. And, this is something that he feels first of all, that he has to do. And I think the reason why he feels he has to do is because he wants to give back. He feels that this magician did something special for his mother and for him. And now he wants to take that technology. What would the purpose be for this traveler to give Jace this technology? What was the purpose of it all? Like, why? And so Jace is wondering to himself, I have to do something with this because it's very special, and it might benefit not just the people in Piltover, but the people just in their entire planet, right?
Yeah. And if you go back to the Undercity again, what was great was you have this great training scene with Zwei, where she trains a little bit of boxing with the boxing mechanics, and we can see Powder with a little shooting gallery, and even a funny moment when Milo is trying to hit enforcers with the little balls. That was a little nice funny moment. But luckily they escaped the enforcers again.
Yes, we get to see a lot of very interesting ways that kids spend their time. And one of the ways they do that is by practicing, sort of like for us, it would be Dance Dance Revolution. But for them, it's sort of like this game where they have to practice fighting. And Vi is like virtually an expert. And, Powder's not bad when she has to pick up a gun. She seems to be very, very good at aiming and,
especially since they were moving targets was just little
and then
points to hit.
When the machine breaks down, she fixes it. She has skills. I mean, these kids really they're not ordinary children. They're really special kids, but they are in this underworld that kind of limits their abilities of what their future is going to be like. And that's also kind of very sad in a way, that there is that situation, that they have this limitation, and we can clearly see the difference of their lifestyle compared to the people in Piltover. And, it's really unfortunate, and something that's really, I think, could possibly change things. And I'm not going to say that Jace wants to change people's lives in the underground, but he makes a point of saying that he wants to change people's lives for the better. And, he thinks that he talks about Hectech, I think is what he calls it.
Correct. Hectech.
And the idea is that this particular technology should improve everything for everybody. And I think that that's a very noble cause. But at the same time, he is very ignorant of the underground. Obviously, people in Piltover know it exists. But, to be honest with you, Dieter, they have no idea of the day-to-day struggles that the people in the underground have to go through. In fact, it almost feels like another world, doesn't it?
Yeah. And we can see Grayson's second in command, Marcus, has a little bit of a talk about with Wenda in his bar, where they're still trying to locate the four kids. And later we can see that Grayson is not happy with Marcus's doing down there, because she and Wenda has some sort of handling the situation. And at that moment, the pipe comes through the pipe, and we didn't exactly know what it will entail. And then we get to the end of the episode just with some music, that was really great. And we can see Powder going into the bar, and what I just first didn't realize, she has the teddy bear that was stuck in the roofs, in the line of the roofs, and Jinx wasn't able to get this, but Powder has it. How did she get it? We don't know. And she just sits the little teddy on the bar, no explanation, just with some great music behind it, and the second episode ends. It was just a totally great ending, just with music, no extra dialogue given. And I don't know if I catched it the first time watching it, that she got the teddy that was actually stuck for Jinx a long time ago.
No, you're right. This is a good point. That story that her sister told her was very important. And she did that in order to give her sister support. Not everybody is perfect. And You know, you can't always do things right every single time. And I think that this is a valid point, but they make a point of highlighting poor Powder's, you know, faults, you know, and she's just a child. And honestly, Dieter, I think they're expecting no child should have to be in this kind of position. And, you know, it's very unfair. You know, the weight of these heists are being put on her shoulders. You know, I'm just astounded that she even has to deal with this. And it doesn't really matter if the other children were, you know, faster or smarter. No child should have to really deal with this. And I think that this is very important to think about because, you know, we see situations like this in the real world where children are put in these impossible situations. And she's in an impossible situation. She's trying to live up to the expectations of her peers, and the expectations are something that she should never even have to live up to. So, you know, it's really something that I think is thought-provoking in this series. And we do see things like this in real life. And, you know, honestly, I just really don't understand how or why, you know, Powder she's trying to impress her sister, but, you know, most kids can't do what she's already done, you know, and I really feel for Powder because this is something that could really kind of mess her up, you know, in regards to her accomplishments and how she views life. You know, life isn't supposed to be thinking about how and where you're going to, you know, do your next heist. But she's trying her best to fit into this, and it's impossible to fit into this underground world because everybody's almost like a misfit there. So, you know, she's trying to kind of like blend in, and I'm like, well, she can't blend in. She's kind of special, you know, she's a little different. And, you know, perhaps they also see that about her, and they don't, you know, when I say perhaps the other people in the underground see that about her, and they don't particularly care for her quirkiness or her differences. But she is a human being and a little girl who needs to grow up and needs support. And thank God her sister is there right now, let's say. But I honestly think that, you know, it's a foreshadowing of stuff that's going to come to haunt her. This idea that she's, you know, the idea that she's called a jinx, which is not a very nice thing to say about anyone, really, you know, can create an issue. But she's also the person who managed to find the crystals. And so I think that what's interesting about that is that she's the one who discovered that. You know, she's motivated by food, but the fact that she still has them, and that's the thing that could connect her back to this heist, and she still managed to sort of keep them under wraps, is a miracle. Because I would think, I don't know why I would think this, but they seem so easy to hide. Dieter.
Yeah, okay, she has a little pouch in it, you know, they take not a little bit much room to put in, you know, but they're powerful, you know. Don't mess with the magic crystals.
Absolutely. And the other thing that is very apparent in this particular episode as well is that one mystery that has remained unsolved is the fact is why there is an underground at all when Piltover is so well off and they won for nothing. And it seems like it's a big city. Why are there so many people in the underground living in sort of, you know, very, very poor conditions? And it's a mystery in the sense of, you know, why aren't the people from Piltover, you know, elevating these people in the underground? You know, this is a question that we ask even today. You know, why do we have these big slums when we know, like in some of the wealthiest nations, we could kind of, you know, do away with all this poverty and people starving. So this is another mystery that, you know, you have to ask yourself. At least I asked myself, because it's almost like a mirror of, you know, any big city here on our planet, and then you would see people who are less fortunate in a slum situation. So I really think that was important that they showed that as well. And I think the idea that the people from Piltover feel that they don't want the Zon citizens to overstep their boundaries is a sign of elitism. So, you know, I mean, the idea that they kind of maybe have a superiority complex against the underground. But there is no reason for that. If they want their society to progress, they needed to bring the underground people along with them. And it's unfair that these underground people are down there. I can't even figure it out. It feels like there shouldn't be a boundary. What do you think, Dieter?
Yes, but if there weren't a boundary, we wouldn't have the great conflict between.
Yes, it's true.
those two factions. We have a little bit more of the steampunk in Piltover, and a little bit more of the cyberpunky stuff in the underground city.
That is true, and we are seeing incredible innovation there. And it's true that Shimmer is somewhat of a question.
Once again, the animation is just when I watched the second episode again, it's just top notch.
Well, I forgot that I was watching animation.
Yeah,
especially
totally.
that scene that you pointed out, Dieter, where the Zon person is being interrogated by an enforcer and they get pushed through the window. I think Powder was like, well, they said to stay low, so we're staying in here. And then the window breaks open.
Yeah,
and it's
a great shocking moment, because I didn't expect that at all,
And it's animation going from like left to right, not, like towards you as the viewer, but, kind of like in their direction. And it just was so well done. And it seemed very real. The character development is just top notch. This series is very, very special, Dieter. I haven't seen anything like it, honestly, ever. And I think that the variety of storylines that we're even getting, the undertones and the variety of storylines in this is something really, really unique. Perhaps really hasn't even been attempted before, because the amount of effort that they must have put into to make this look as real as it does.
Especially, like I said to you, since considering the source material, the game in general is not a story-based game, so I wouldn't have picked League of Legends in any capacity to make some animated show or even live action show out of it. I can understand if when HBO Max wants to do The Last of Us or something like that, but League of Legends would never come to my mind to make an adaptation of that MOBA game, but they proved us all wrong how it can be done.
They certainly did, and this is an example of fantastic storytelling, fantastic world building, and incredible animation.
Even having to know the game at all.
Without having to know the game at all, and we have to just reiterate that you do not need to know anything about Arcane League of Legends in order to enjoy this incredible animated series. This really is something that has blown me away. You're hooked after the first episode. There is no turning back. And each episode
it doesn't need 2 or 3 or 4 episodes until the spark is are flying. It was
exactly
after episode 1, you were hooked to see how it will evolve, And it
absolutely
it's gotten only better,
It keeps getting better. And, after you watch the second episode, you're like, wow, this is an intense story. It certainly has a lot of layers. The characters are complex. We see different levels of power in Piltover as well as in Zon. And we also see these different citizens who really just have opinions about the Arcane and about Piltover and about Zon and about, where everybody fits in the place of things. I mean, when Heimdallr told Jace that absolutely not, you shouldn't be fooling around with magic, here goes his assistant, Victor, who says, hey, I think this is very interesting. And so, it kind of shows that, there are some people who want to think outside of the box. The other thing I was going to say is that Jace is not really accepted he's a citizen of Piltover, but he's not quite as prestigious as a lot of the other citizens in Piltover are. And
this story arc is great, especially like you said, now at the first council meeting we have, you see how they much like to go with Heimerdinger's opinion, but later in the show it will change a little bit.
Yes, and we do see that, and I love that they did something like this where
Yeah.
people's opinions are changed and they grow as characters, and as honestly their years do pass in this series. So it's not all at the same time period necessarily. We do have a jump in time, and that's very important to make sense of these events and understand how impactful they are. As the series progresses. But I just love this episode. I think that we're very lucky to get this at this time, and you can watch it 100 times. It's still fantastic. There's still things that you discover. As Dieter and I were discussing before we started this video, we watched the episode again, and there's always something in the episode, Dieter, that you haven't noticed
little details that I didn't know. If I could have probably catched it the first time and just forgotten about it, just that little thing. Chase's mother and her 2 fingers are already destroyed from the frostbite, and then later you see her, and here she has this little protective metal cases over her fingers. This was just a great detail for me.
It certainly is a great detail, and this is how much the writers cared. The writers and the creators of this animation cared about how this particular story would unfold, and those details make such a big difference. I mean, even the part where Jace is transported with his mother, and you can see the runes, or I thought they were runes, kind of floating. Yeah, in the air. And that just really gave you an idea. This must be magic. Like, this is something that we all associate with magic. And I still wonder who this traveler, who this magician was.
If we will meet him again. Perhaps in a later season.
Yes, I really wonder about who this was. And, let's say if he comes and sees Jace is trying to develop this magic, which he gave it to him.
Yeah.
I really wonder who that is, and it's very, very intriguing.
It seems when he used the crystal and later gave him to Chase, that crystal, the energy of that crystal is depleted, it seemed. So I think he gave that to Chase, that the wizard said, okay, this crystal is now in general probably useless. It's just a crystal anymore, but nothing else. It's not that he thought I give him a crystal with that much power. But that was what's keeping Chase on his track to pursue this.
Yes, and perhaps the traveler, the wizard, knew that if he gave him this crystal, that Jace could create something similar. If he studied the dynamics of how to create this crystal, that could somehow harness or enhance the arcane arts. And so I think that perhaps that might have been his motivation for giving him that particular crystal. But you're right. It seems like it's just on his bracelet.
Yeah.
And it serves as inspiration and sometimes like a comfort for Jace, who tends to kind of touch it a lot throughout the series. He wears it in like you said, a leather kind of bracelet on his arm, and in it is a crystal. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw those be for sale.
the first merch.
Definitely. And I desperately am looking for merchandise and stuff. You showed me a video of the actual series being advertised on is it the Khalifa?
Yeah, correct.
And
Insane.
Yes, Insane. I'm waiting for the merchandise, Dieter. I can't wait to get some things or even some 1/6 scale figures of the Arcane, because this has really just been such an amazing series. And do you have any last thoughts about episode 2 that you would like to share?
I would say we have met a lot of some new characters, and not one of them was actually uninteresting. That you would say, oh, this character I don't give that much about it. No, all characters were generally interesting. And the only advantage that you have when you have knowledge of the game and the champions that you can play, how they will evolve, or when will they get their specific weapon. you know. Even the Victor is probably in the game more in his later stages of the series, you know, when you play with him. I would imagine. But if we are wrong, let us know in the comments.
We certainly would like to know. Victor, in this particular series, is a disabled person.
Yeah.
And so it would be curious to see how he develops in this, because of what the Arcane seems to procure, this power that it seems to have, and to see how that could change things for him and his interest. Is his interest because he can see the potential in new technology and how it might benefit him? You know, these are all questions that we have yet to learn the answer to. And I so look forward to continuing this series on the Arcane.
With
probably
episode 3.
Yes, episode 3. This is probably the best animated series this year.
Yeah. Definitely. No, there's no question about it.
Yes. And I just want to thank the viewers for joining us in our review of the Arcane episode.
Some mysteries are better left unsolved.
Yes, some mysteries are better left unsolved. Where can people find you, Dieter?
Actually, you know, at the Burn Network, where people find me on the Let's Get Physical Media show. But I'm not on Twitter or anything. Just leave a comment in the comment section if you want to know anything more about something specific, you know.
Absolutely. And you can find me on Monday nights. I'm usually on Toxic Femininity for Midnight's Edge. Every other Thursday, and I'm on Uncivilized Scoundrels talking Star Wars with the 1/6 Scale Man. And sometimes on Fridays afternoons, I'm also on Midnight's Edge in the morning. But you can always find me as well as Dieter on the Bird Network. Thank you so much for joining us, and be kind.